This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and Radio. I'm David Western. We're delighted to welcome back now Brad Sherman. He's Democratic Congressman from California. He's a member of the Foreign Relations and Financial Services Committees. Congressman, thank you so much for being back with us. I have a lot of financial services questions to ask you, but let's start with foreign affairs. We just heard from the former U.S. Ambassador to NATO, that's Kay Bailey Hutchison, about what we need to do to continue to support Ukraine. As a member of the Foreign Affairs Committee, what do you think we should be doing?
Well, I can understand how Germany doesn't want to take the lead in transferring main battle tanks to Ukraine. Unlike France, Britain, and the United States, Germany does not have its own nuclear deterrent. And I can understand why the Pentagon says the Abrams tank should not be transferred to Ukraine because it's too advanced for them to use and consumes too much fuel. The solution, I think, is for America to be willing to take the lead by asking Poland to transfer Leopard tanks to the United States and getting German consent for that. And then we can take the lead. We can be the party transferring those tanks to Ukraine. But Ukraine needs the right tank. The Leopard is the right tank. But America should be taking the lead in making the transfer.
I'm really glad I asked the question because I had not thought of the possibility of Poland to the United States to Ukraine. Thank you so much. Let's turn now to the financial services part of it. And particularly one of the things that's on everybody's mind, at least at Bloomberg right now, is that debt ceiling. We talked with Senator Joe Manchin of West Virginia last week over in Switzerland, and this is what he had to say about possible defaulting on U.S. debt.
We will pay our debts. We always have, we always will. How messy is going to getting from point A to point B, we don't know yet. But I'd like to see, really, truly, a coalition of a bipartisan, bicameral, Democrats and Republicans, putting a group together that says we're going to look at all the trust funds to find out where the deficiencies, when they're going to be insolvent, and what we can do to prevent that.
So, Congressman Sherman, how about it? How about a bipartisan approach, maybe with some sort of commission or something to figure out a way through this?
Absolutely, but not holding the debt limit hostage, not threatening to default on our debt. Those things should be separate. We should probably not have a debt limit at all. No other country does. And in corporate or personal affairs, if you need to rein in spending, you do that when you spend. It is not good budgeting for a family to say, well, we spent too much on a fancy dinner last week, so let's just not pay the credit card bill. Won't that help our financial position? That could blow your FICO score completely out of the water, and we cannot allow a downgrade in the U.S. debt and credit rating. But yes, we need to be looking at the overall structure, and it can't just be on spending. It also has to be on taxes. The Trump tax cut continues to hobble our ability to collect revenue, particularly on the corporate side.
Yeah, I must say I've managed enough budgets on the private sector side to know you got to take a look at revenue as well as costs, which is what you're talking about when you talk about taxes. And I understand taking hostage sounds pretty negative to me. But do you understand some people's perspective on Capitol Hill, and maybe in voters as well, that says you keep talking about doing something about the debt and the deficit, but you don't. We need some sort of concrete assurance.
A lot of Republicans voted for the most recent spending bill, and the next spending bill, we won't spend a single penny starting October 1st of this year that a Republican Speaker of the House doesn't bring to the floor. So the place to look at spending is when you're voting for spending bills. Now, there's also the entitlement, Social Security, and Medicare. Democrats have put forward a proposal that would bring more revenue into the Social Security system, and I think that needs to be looked at. But we need to keep Social Security solvent, and in some areas we need to see higher Social Security benefits. But Republicans have not proposed spending cuts. They proposed the concept of spending cuts because they can't actually find a spending cut that they universally support.
So thus far, I think what we've heard from the White House is we're not going to negotiate over the debt ceiling. I think for your rationale, that's holding it hostage. Is that a sensible approach at this point? Don't you have to negotiate in Washington?
Well, if we're going to negotiate, we should be talking about things the Republicans hate, like revising and eliminating much of the Trump tax bill. So we can go in with our demands. They can go in with their demands, although they can't write them because they can't agree on anything other than the concept that Democrats should figure out how to cut spending. But ultimately, we should agree to a clean suspension of the debt limit. And I agree with Senator Manchin. We should be having bipartisan commissions looking at spending on the entitlement side, looking at spending on the discretionary side, and looking at revenue. And the deficits we've been running the last few years cannot be continued into the future.
Congressman, as you know so well, we have a new Congress now, 118th Congress, and the Republicans are in a slim majority in the House of Representatives. One of the big questions has been crypto regulation, and we've talked before to your new chairman, Patrick McHenry, who seems to be in favor of that. Is there bipartisan support for some sort of legislation to deal with cryptocurrencies?
There's always bipartisan support for something very vague. The fact is that we need to make sure that the SEC has all the authority they need to regulate, because they're the most powerful and the strictest regulator. And if there was any area of our economy where we need the strictest regulation, it would be the crypto field. I'd prefer to see crypto banned from U.S. investment. I don't think I can get there. My guess is that given all the power of the crypto billionaires, we're more likely to pass laws that hobble regulation than that provide regulation. So I'm looking forward to be playing defense more than offense, because while obviously crypto's taken a real black eye with Sam Bankman-Fried or Sam Bankman-Fraud or whatever you want to call them, the fact is they've got the money, they've got the power, they've got the lobbyists. And those of us who want to see the know your customer, anti-money laundering, sanctions enforcement, those who want to see and who want to prevent a new tool for tax evasion, which is what crypto aspires to be. There's no PAC, there's no lobbyist, there isn't the political power. So if anything, we're going to be having to play defense and prevent bad laws from removing the SEC's current authority.
So give me a sense a little bit of what that defense is. We've talked with Sherrod Brown, Senator Sherrod Brown from Ohio, who is chair of the Senate Banking Committee. He has said, look, I'm not sure what the use case is for cryptocurrency. So he seems to be more on your side of it. You say banning it, probably that's not doable. What can you do short of that?
I think it may ultimately be doable. Short of that, what I'd like to see is a statute that clarifies the definition of security and makes it plain that all cryptocurrency is a security subject to SEC regulation, and the crypto exchanges are all subject to SEC regulation. If we can't do that, then we have to play defense and make sure that current law, which I think gives the SEC authority over almost every cryptocurrency, stays in force. But then you've got uncertainty that has to be resolved by the courts, applying 1930s law and 1940s Supreme Court decisions to cryptocurrency. Obviously, that's a tough job for the courts, but Congress runs away from the tough jobs and often leaves them to the courts.
Congressman, I've noticed you've referred to the SEC several times, not the CFTC. Some people think that maybe the responsibility should be there, or at least it should be shared. Well, why not the CFTC?
Sam Bankman-Fried's entire reason for being involved in politics was to take the SEC out of crypto and put in the CFTC, a weaker organization that will provide the patina of regulation without really effective regulation. So as I told to my colleagues, you cannot trash Sam Bankman-Fried in one part of your speech and then try to pass his bill on the same day or in the same committee. So the CFTC is the weaker organization, and a statute that gave the CFTC more authority would signal the courts to resolve matters to give the SEC less authority. So as long as we are in the vague business of applying 1930s, 1940s legal concept to crypto, we can't do anything that pushes the courts in the direction of disempowering the SEC, which is the strong regulator.
Congressman, really good to have you back with us. Thank you for your time. This is Brad Sherman. He's Democratic Congressman from California. Still to come, we're going to talk with